The soft glow of the computer screen lit up Tom Walker's tired face as he scrolled through endless listings on the auction website. Outside his window, the city had gone quiet, marking another late night of his endless hunt for unique antiques. At 28, Tom had already made a name for himself in the world of antique restoration, turning his childhood fascination with old things into a successful small business. His eyes were about to give up when something unusual caught his attention. There, between a rusty old bicycle and someone's grandmother's china set, was a listing that seemed different. The picture was blurry, showing what looked like a metallic object with strange geometric patterns. The title simply read Family Heirloom, Unknown Origin, with a starting bid of just $1. Tom leaned closer to his screen, his expert eyes trying to make sense of the patterns. They didn't match any style or period he knew, and he knew many. The seller's account was new, with no previous sales or ratings. Common sense told him to skip it, but something about those intricate lines pulled at him, like a half-remembered dream. He clicked on the listing for a better look. The description was as vague as the title. Found in grandfather's attic. Material unknown. Purpose unknown. Must sell quickly. But it was the last line that made his heart beat faster. Serious buyers only. No returns. No questions. Tom opened another tab and began his usual research routine. He checked similar items, searched for matching patterns in museum databases, and looked for any history of similar pieces being sold. Nothing. This item was unique, and in his line of work, unique usually meant either worthless or priceless. The auction had 30 minutes left, and surprisingly, no one had placed a bid. Tom's finger hovered over his mouse as he debated with himself. His business account had enough money, and something in his gut told him this was important. Just as he decided to place a modest bid, a message popped up from the seller. "Are you interested, Thomas Walker?" Tom froze. He hadn't logged into the site. He'd only been browsing as a guest. How did they know his name? Before he could think it through, his fingers were already typing a reply. "How do you know who I am?" The response came instantly. "Your reputation precedes you. You understand old things. You respect them. You can see value where others see junk. Are you interested?" Tom's hands trembled slightly as he typed back. "What exactly am I looking at?" "Something that needs the right owner. Something that needs you. But you must decide quickly. Others are watching." As if on cue, the first bid appeared, $5. Then another at 10. The quiet auction was suddenly heating up. Tom's heart raced as he watched the price climb. $20, $50, $100. Whatever this thing was, others had noticed it too. Without fully understanding why, Tom entered a bid of $500. It was more than he usually risked on an unknown item, but that feeling in his gut grew stronger. The other bidders immediately countered. $700, $800. Tom went to $1,000. With 1 minute left, the price sat at $1,500. Tom's palms were sweating as he typed in his final bid, $2,000. It was reckless, possibly crazy, but he couldn't let this one go. The last 30 seconds ticked by like hours. "Congratulations," the website announced. "You've won this auction." Tom let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Almost immediately, another message from the seller appeared. "Well chosen, Thomas Walker. Prepare for delivery at midnight. Alone. Your workshop address is suitable. Do not share this information with anyone. Your life is about to change." Tom stared at the message, his excitement slowly mixing with uncertainty. He checked the time, 11:15 p.m. The mention of his workshop address, which he definitely hadn't provided, should have scared him. Instead, it only made him more curious. He grabbed his keys, locked up his apartment, and drove through the quiet streets to his workshop across town. Whatever was coming at midnight, he would face it in the place where he felt most at home, surrounded by the old machines and tools he knew so well. As he unlocked the workshop door, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple auction. He was right, but he couldn't possibly imagine just how right he was. The workshop was quiet except for the gentle ticking of old clocks and the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Tom sat at his workbench, surrounded by his tools and half-finished projects. The large clock on the wall showed 11:55 p.m. 5 minutes until whatever was supposed to happen would happen. He'd spent the last half hour pacing, checking his phone, and double-checking the auction listing. The web page had disappeared completely, leaving no trace that the auction had ever existed. Even his confirmation email had vanished from his inbox. The only proof he had was the money missing from his account. At 11:59, the lights began to flicker. Tom's heart jumped into his throat as the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. His breath came out in visible puffs of steam. The old radio in the corner crackled to life, playing nothing but static, and all his restoration projects started to vibrate slightly on their shelves. A beam of blue-white light burst through the workshop's ceiling, but strangely left no hole. Tom stumbled backward, knocking over his chair as the beam touched the floor about 10 feet in front of him. The light began to take shape, forming a human-sized column that pulsed with energy. Then she stepped out. Tom's jaw dropped. Where he'd expected a package, there stood the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with silver-white hair that seemed to float as if underwater. Her skin had a slight bluish tinge, and her eyes, all three of them, were the color of molten gold. She wore what looked like armor made of flowing liquid metal. "Thomas Walker," she said, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "I am Lyra. Thank you for answering my distress beacon." Tom tried to form words, failed, then tried again. "Distress beacon. I thought I was buying an antique." Lyra smiled, and small patterns of light danced across her skin. "In a way, you were. The beacon was created by my ancestors thousands of years ago. It was designed to find someone worthy in times of great need." She looked around the workshop with obvious interest. Someone who understands the value of old things and has the wisdom to use them. Before Tom could respond, a high-pitched whine filled the air. Lyra's expression changed to one of alarm. She rushed to the window and looked up at the sky. "They followed me. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Tom asked, finally finding his voice. "The Collective. They're a group that controls most of the known galaxy through their advanced technology. She paused, looking at him intently. "They want to make sure humanity never joins the galactic community. Your species has something they fear. What could humans possibly have that would scare an advanced alien civilization? Creativity. Adaptability. You solve problems in ways we would never think of." She gestured at his workshop. "Look at all of this. You understand the basic principles of how things work. Most advanced species have forgotten that. They rely too heavily on technology they don't truly understand." A deep rumbling shook the building. Lyra grabbed Tom's hand. Her skin was surprisingly warm and pulled him away from the window. "They're here. I'm sorry, but by accepting the beacon, you've become part of this. I need your help." Tom looked at her hand holding his, then at the mysterious woman herself. His whole world had just turned upside down, but surprisingly, he wasn't scared. If anything, he felt more alive than ever before. "What do you need me to do?" "We need to hide, but not in the way they'll expect. Your knowledge of old technology might be our greatest advantage. The Collective's scanners can detect any advanced energy signatures, but they've forgotten how to look for anything simpler." Tom's mind was already racing with possibilities. He looked around his workshop with new eyes, seeing potential weapons and hiding places in his beloved antiques. "I think I know just the place," he said, moving toward a large cabinet in the corner. "But first, tell me exactly what we're up against." As he reached for the cabinet's handle, another explosion rocked the building. Lyra's third eye began to glow with a fierce light. "We don't have much time," she said. The collective's hunters will be here any minute. Everything depends on what we do next. Tom squared his shoulders and gave her a determined smile. Then let's show them what human ingenuity can do. Tom pulled open the heavy wooden cabinet, revealing rows of old radios, telegraphs, and mechanical calculators. He quickly grabbed a 1940s radio transmitter and an old signal generator. Lyra watched him with growing interest as he connected wires with practiced speed. Their scanners are designed to detect complex energy patterns, Tom explained, remembering what she'd said about the collective's technology. But what about simple radio waves? The kind we use before digital signals. Lyra's third eye brightened. They would ignore such primitive signatures. They wouldn't expect anyone to use such basic technology. She reached into her liquid metal armor and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with inner light. This is my ship's emergency beacon. Can you hide its signal? The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the roof. Tom grabbed the crystal and quickly wrapped copper wire around it, connecting it to the old radio circuits. The crystal's glow dimmed and changed to match the warm orange light of the vacuum tubes. Clever, Lyra whispered. You've masked its quantum signature with analog interference. The workshop's front door burst open with a crash. 3 tall figures in sleek black armor stepped in, their helmets scanning the room with glowing red sensors. Tom's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm and keep working. Life signs detected, one of them announced in a metallic voice. But no quantum signatures. Sweep again. Tom reached behind him without looking, finding an old mechanical music box by touch. He wound it up and set it on the workbench. The simple melody filled the room, its gears and springs creating a pattern of motion that confused the hunter's sensors even more. Multiple mechanical anomalies, another hunter reported, unable to isolate target. Lyra smiled at Tom, clearly impressed. While the hunters were distracted by the music box, she quietly moved to an old printing press in the corner. Tom understood immediately. He started up its engine, and the rhythmic churning of gears and springs added to the mechanical chaos in the room. One by one, Tom activated more old machines. A grandfather clock's pendulum swung back and forth. A hand-cranked calculator's wheels spun. A telegraph key clicked out random patterns. Each simple device added its own mechanical signature to the room, creating a web of noise that the hunter's advanced sensors couldn't filter out. Interference too strong, the lead hunter growled. Switch to visual scanning only. But that was exactly what Tom had hoped for. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her behind a large mirror he'd been restoring. It was an antique two-way mirror from an old department store, and he'd found that its aged silver backing created strange reflections. The hunter's red scanning beams bounced off dozens of old mirrors, prisms, and polished metal surfaces that Tom had carefully arranged around his workshop. Their simple optics scattered the high-tech scanner's beams in a dazzling display. Target lost, one hunter reported. Room contains too many reflective surfaces for accurate tracking. Lyra squeezed Tom's hand, her 3 eyes shining with admiration. He had turned his entire workshop into a low-tech fortress, using nothing but antiques and basic physics to confound the most advanced alien technology. The hunters moved through the workshop, their frustration evident in their jerky movements. They passed within inches of Tom and Lyra's hiding spot, but the old mirror's imperfect surface broke up their heat signatures just enough to keep them hidden. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the lead hunter made a sound of disgust. No useful data. Target has evaded detection. Return to ship and recalibrate. The hunters stomped out, and soon the sound of their ship taking off rumbled through the workshop. Tom and Lyra waited a few more minutes before coming out from behind the mirror. The workshop was still alive with the sound of dozens of old machines working together in an orchestrated chaos of gears, springs, and simple mechanics. That was amazing, Lyra said, looking at Tom with new respect. You turned their advanced technology against them, using nothing but simple machines and basic principles. Tom started shutting down the machines one by one, a plan already forming in his mind. "They'll be back," he said. "And next time, we'll be ready. I think it's time to visit some of my antique collector friends. If one workshop full of old technology can cause this much trouble, imagine what we could do with more." Lyra's liquid metal armor rippled with excitement, teaching them to fear humanity's primitive technology. "I like the way you think, Thomas Walker." Dawn was breaking as Tom's old pickup truck rumbled down the empty highway. Lyra sat in the passenger seat, her alien features hidden by a clever combination of a hooded jacket and sunglasses. Her third eye remained closed, making her look almost human in the early morning light. "My friend Pete has the largest collection of mechanical calculators on the East Coast," Tom explained, keeping his eyes on the road. "If anyone can help us build more low-tech defenses, it's him." A flash of light in the rearview mirror caught his attention. 3 black vehicles had appeared behind them, moving far too quickly to be normal cars. Their surfaces seemed to ripple like liquid metal. "Collective hunters," Lyra said, her voice tight. "They've changed tactics. They're using Earth vehicles as disguises." Tom pressed the accelerator, but the old truck couldn't possibly outrun the alien vehicles. Instead, he smiled and patted the dashboard. "Good thing this truck is from 1965. No computer chips, no electronic systems. Just good old Detroit steel and mechanics." He turned off the main highway onto a narrow dirt road that led into dense woods. The truck's heavy frame handled the rough terrain easily, while the sleek alien vehicles struggled to maintain their speed on the uneven ground. "They're designed for smooth, advanced roads," Lyra observed. "Their suspension systems are too sophisticated to handle this primitive surface effectively." Tom drove deeper into the woods, taking paths that were barely visible. He'd spent years exploring these back roads while hunting for antiques in old barns and forgotten storage units. Every bump and turn was familiar to him. A bright beam of energy shot past the truck, scorching a tree. "They're getting desperate," Lyra said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crystal from earlier. "Can you use this? It still has some power." Tom thought quickly as he drove. "The crystal creates energy, right? Like a battery." When Lyra nodded, he reached behind the seat and pulled out an old car radio. "Let's give them some interference they won't forget." While steering with one hand, he connected the crystal to the radio's simple circuits. The crystal's energy, filtered through the old analog device, created a massive burst of radio static. The black vehicles behind them suddenly swerved, their sophisticated sensors overwhelmed by the crude but powerful signal. "2 more miles to Pete's place," Tom said, taking a sharp turn that the aliens' vehicles were too wide to follow. They'd have to take a longer route around, giving Tom and Lyra some breathing room. The dirt road opened into a clearing where an enormous old barn stood. Its red paint was fading, but the size of it was impressive. Tom drove straight through the open doors, and Pete was already there waiting, a knowing look on his bearded face. "Call the head about those unwanted visitors of yours," Pete said, closing the massive barn doors behind them. "Got everything ready." He didn't seem at all surprised by Lyra's alien appearance as she stepped out of the truck. The inside of the barn was a wonderland of old technology. Hundreds of mechanical calculators lined the walls. Analog computers from the 1950s sat on sturdy workbenches. Typewriters, telegraphs, and early printing presses filled every available space. Pete walked over to a large tarp and pulled it off, revealing what looked like a massive Tesla coil. "Built this beauty myself," he said proudly. "Creates electromagnetic pulses using nothing but mechanical power. No electronics for them to track." The ground rumbled as the alien vehicles approached. Pete started up an old generator, and the Tesla coil hummed to life. Lyra's eyes widened as she recognized the simple genius of the device. "Your friend understands," she said to Tom. "Advanced technology has specific frequencies it uses. This machine creates random pulses across all frequencies." Pete finished for her. "Been working on it for years. Never knew why until today. Always figured it might come in handy." Tom looked at the approaching headlights through the barn's dusty windows. They thought humanity would be easy to handle because our technology is primitive, he said, helping Pete adjust the Tesla coil. Time to show them that sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones. The barn doors shuddered as the collective hunters prepared to breach them. But inside, surrounded by centuries of human ingenuity stripped down to its most basic forms, Tom felt more confident than ever. The Tesla coil crackled with power as the barn doors burst open. 3 collective hunters stormed in, weapons raised, but their advanced targeting systems were already failing under the waves of electromagnetic interference. Behind them, their commander stepped forward, his black armor more elaborate than the others. "I am Commander Rex," he announced, his metallic voice distorted by Pete's machines. "Surrender the alien fugitive, and we may spare your primitive world." Tom looked around the barn, at the army of antique machines surrounding them. Pete had been busy in the hours since his phone call, connecting mechanical calculators to form a crude but effective network. The clicking and whirring of hundreds of gears filled the air, creating patterns that confused the hunter's sensors. "Primitive doesn't mean powerless," Tom said, turning a large brass handle. A dozen restored player pianos started up at once, their punched cards creating rhythmic patterns that further scrambled the aliens' communications. Lyra stepped forward, her liquid metal armor flowing like quicksilver. "Your advanced technology has made you forget the basic principles of science," she told Rex. "These humans remember what you've forgotten." Rex laughed, the sound harsh and artificial. "What can outdated machines do against?" His voice cut off as Pete fired up an ancient radio transmitter, its powerful analog signals drowning out the collective's digital communications. More collectors had arrived while Tom and Lyra were on the run. Mary from the antique store down the road brought her collection of Victorian music boxes. Old Joe wheeled in his restored phonographs. Even Tom's competitor Bill showed up with a truck full of mechanical toys and clockwork automatons. Each simple machine added its own layer of confusion to the hunter's sensors. Their advanced scanning equipment, designed to detect complex energy signatures, was overwhelmed by the chaos of pure mechanical motion and basic electrical currents. "It's not just about the machines," Tom explained as he helped Mary set up her music boxes. "It's about understanding how things work at their most basic level. No black boxes, no mysterious technologies. Just gears, springs, and simple physics." The hunters tried to advance, but found themselves trapped in a web of confusion. Their targeting systems couldn't lock on through the interference. Their communication networks were reduced to static. Even their armor's advanced sensors were giving them false readings, making them stumble like drunken men. Lyra worked quickly with the collectors, showing them how to tune their antique machines to create maximum disruption. She was amazed by how quickly these humans grasped concepts that her own people had forgotten in their rush to embrace advanced technology. "Your species has something special," she told Tom as they cranked up an enormous gramophone. "You don't just use technology, you understand it. You can strip it down to its essentials and build it back up." Commander Rex was shouting orders, but his hunters couldn't coordinate their actions. Each collector had brought their own specialty, their own understanding of old technology, and together they had created something the collective had never faced before. An army powered by simplicity itself. Pete's Tesla coil buzzed louder, sending arcs of electricity dancing through the air. The hunter's armor began to malfunction, their liquid metal surfaces rippling uncontrollably. Rex tried to fire his weapon, but the electromagnetic interference had scrambled its complex targeting systems. "Impossible," Rex growled, his armor twitching. "These are nothing but toys and obsolete junk." "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Pete said, adjusting his machines, "especially when your enemy has forgotten how things really work." The resistance grew stronger as word spread through the antique collecting community. More enthusiasts arrived every hour, each bringing their own pieces of history to add to the defense. They set up a network of mechanical telegraphs for communication, used signal mirrors for coordination, and turned the barn into a fortress of forgotten technology. Tom looked at the growing army of collectors and their machines, then at Lyra, who was teaching Mary how to modulate her music boxes for maximum effect. In just one day, they had created something unprecedented, a fighting force that used humanity's past to protect its future. Commander Rex and his hunters were forced to retreat, their advanced technology rendered useless by the symphony of simple machines. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. The collective wouldn't give up easily. But now humanity had a way to fight back. Sometimes, moving forward meant remembering what worked in the past. 3 days after the battle at Pete's barn, Tom stood in his workshop, now transformed into the Resistance headquarters. Maps covered the walls, marked with sightings of collective ships. The room hummed with the sound of old machines working together, creating a constant shield of interference that kept them hidden from alien scans. Lyra burst through the door, her third eye glowing with urgency. They're coming. The collective's entire Earth fleet. They've decided we're too dangerous to ignore. Tom looked at the network of brass tubes running through his workshop, a pneumatic messaging system connecting all the collector bases in the city. He pulled a lever, sending the warning to everyone. Within minutes, the tubes whistled with responses as the Resistance mobilized. They think we'll be easy to crush with overwhelming force, Tom said, watching more collectors arrive through his windows. But that's exactly what we've been preparing for. The sky darkened as massive collective ships appeared above the city. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, their hulls shifting like liquid metal in the sunlight. Commander Rex's voice boomed from above, amplified by advanced technology. This ends now. Surrender the fugitive and your primitive defenses, or we will destroy everything. Instead of fear, Tom felt a strange calm. He looked at the old fire station valve they'd installed on the roof, then at the series of mirrors positioned on buildings throughout the city. He grabbed the bell's rope and pulled, sending a clear ring through the air. The Resistance plan sprang into action. Hundreds of collectors, each with their own specialty, worked together like a well-oiled machine. Mary's music boxes, now modified with Lyra's help, created frequencies that disrupted the ship's hovering systems. Pete's Tesla coils, stationed at key points around the city, fired up in sequence. Old Joe had brought his entire collection of World War I signal equipment. The simple radio waves played havoc with the collective's complex communications. Bill's mechanical toys, spread throughout the city, created countless false movement signatures that confused their targeting systems. The collective ships launched their first attack, but their energy weapons couldn't lock onto targets through the chaos of mechanical interference. Their beams hit empty buildings while the collectors stayed safe in their low-tech bunkers. "Keep pushing," Tom shouted through the pneumatic tubes. "They don't understand what they're fighting." Lyra worked with a group of collectors, showing them how to use simple mirrors and prisms to redirect the collective's own energy weapons back at their ships. The liquid metal hulls rippled in confusion as their own power was turned against them. Commander Rex himself led a ground assault, but he walked right into their trap. The city's old steam tunnels, reactivated by the Resistance, released clouds of vapor that wreaked havoc with his troops' thermal sensors. Every alley held another surprise: clockwork decoys, mechanical noisemakers, and simple but effective defenses. "You see, Rex," Tom called out through an old bullhorn. "This is what happens when you understand the basics. No black boxes, no mysteries, just pure human ingenuity." The commander's troops stumbled through the street, their advanced armor more hindrance than help. The Resistance had turned the entire city into one giant mechanical computer, with each antique piece playing its part in a symphony of organized chaos. Lyra's crystal, now connected to a network of old radio transmitters, broadcast a signal that made the collective ship's liquid metal hulls begin to solidify. Their adaptable technology, confused by the primitive signals, couldn't maintain its fluid state. "Impossible," Rex shouted as his own armor began to stiffen. "These are nothing but simple machines." Simple doesn't mean powerless, Tom replied, watching as the mighty collective fleet was slowly paralyzed by technology they'd dismissed as primitive. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The battle reached its peak as hundreds of collectors, armed with nothing but restored antiques and basic scientific principles, faced down the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. And step by step, gear by gear, spring by spring, they were winning. Your mistake, Lyra told the frozen Commander Rex, was thinking that progress only moves in one direction. These humans know better. They remember what you forgot. Tom looked at the chaos around him, beautiful in its mechanical simplicity, and knew that humanity had proven itself ready for the stars, not because they had the most advanced technology, but because they understood how to use every tool at their disposal, no matter how simple it seemed. The morning sun rose over a changed city. The collected ships hung motionless in the air, their once fluid metal forms frozen like strange sculptures. In the streets below, collectors were helping each other clean up after the battle, their antique machines still humming away faithfully. Tom sat on the steps of his workshop, holding the original artifact that had started it all, the distress beacon that had brought Lyra to Earth. It seemed smaller now, less mysterious, but somehow more precious. Lyra sat beside him, her third eye catching the early light like a golden spark. "More ships are coming," she said, but her voice held excitement rather than fear. "Not the collective this time. My people received the news of what happened here. They're amazed, impressed. They want to talk." Pete walked up, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. "Well, they better be ready for a lot of questions. Got a whole community of collectors here eager to swap notes about mixing their fancy technology with our old reliable gear." Commander Rex and his hunters had been confined in a makeshift prison, one created using simple mechanical locks and counterweights. Their advanced tools had been no match for good old-fashioned iron and steel. Through the barred windows, Rex watched the humans with a mix of confusion and growing respect. "I still don't understand," he said when Tom walked past. "How could such primitive technology defeat us?" Tom smiled. "Because we never forgot the basics. Every piece of technology, no matter how advanced, builds on simple principles. When you forget those principles, you become dependent on tools you don't really understand." The pneumatic tubes whistled with a new message, ships approaching from the west. But these were different from the collective's vessels. They shimmered with rainbow colors, and their design somehow managed to blend advanced technology with visible mechanical elements. "My people," Lyra said, standing up. "They've learned from what happened here. Look at their ships. They're already adapting, combining the best of both worlds." The new ships landed in the city park, and their crews emerged. They looked similar to Lyra, but their equipment showed signs of rapid redesign. Mechanical components worked alongside their advanced technology, creating something entirely new. The leader of the group approached Tom and Lyra. "We've been watching," she said, "and learning. The collective thought humanity wasn't ready for the stars because your technology was too primitive. But they were wrong. You were more ready than any of us." All around the city, collectors were already mingling with the alien visitors, sharing knowledge and ideas. Mary showed them how her music boxes could be modified to enhance their communication systems. Old Joe's radio equipment was being integrated into their scanners, making them more resilient and adaptable. "This is just the beginning," Lyra told Tom, watching the exchange of ideas with bright eyes. "Imagine what we can create together. Technology that's both advanced and understood, complex, but built on solid foundations." The artifact that had started everything now sat in a special display case in Tom's workshop. But it wasn't alone anymore. Next to it stood examples of the new hybrid technology being born from the collaboration between humans and aliens, beautiful machines that combined the best of both worlds. "You know," Tom said, looking at Lyra with a smile, "when I bid on that artifact, I thought I was just buying another interesting antique for my collection. Instead, I found something much more valuable." Lyra's liquid metal armor rippled with colors as she took his hand. "You found a way to change the galaxy," she said. "And I found someone who reminded me that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most powerful." In the months that followed, Earth became a center of technological innovation, but not in the way anyone had expected. The Antique Collectors Network became the foundation of a new kind of space program. Humanity reached for the stars not by abandoning its past, but by building on it. And it all started with a strange listing on an auction website, a curious antique restorer, and a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life are the simple truths we hold on to. Like understanding how things work, respecting the wisdom of the past, and being open to the unexpected adventures that love can bring.